Hello, and welcome to the interview series where we sit down with some of the wonderful teachers from the Art and Design Department here at CCBC. This is going along in conjunction with the show that showcases all the wonderful work that'll be happening in the spring of 2022. And today we're sitting down with Bob Kramer, one of our photography professors. And I think to begin, I was wondering, how did you get into artwork? What was the pathway there?
Well, I had been a botany major in college for 3.5 years. And as a botany major, I was very interested in taxonomy, which was the identification and classification of plants. So I was always out in Mother Nature, collecting plants. And, I started to feel guilty about picking them and then bringing them back to the lab and then pressing them. And I had a very good friend who had a camera. He had a beautiful Nikon camera. And we were out on a hike one day and he said, "Here, look through this, look through the camera." When I looked through the camera, it was amazing to me how more beautiful you could make something look. And it was just by bringing the camera to your face with this beautiful semi-wide angle lens. And as I started to rotate it, I could just see that by editing out the rest of the world, that you could really create these beautiful relationships within the frame. And I distinctly remember even exactly where we were when I looked through it. I was so excited. I grabbed the camera. I ran around and started to tell people, "Look through this camera. Look how much better it makes it look." So I really decided then that, photography, I started to take a camera with me when I collected plants. And I started to take pictures of the plants. Then I took pictures of the plant and the rock, then the plant and the rock and the stream, and the plant, the rock, the stream, and the sky. So all of a sudden I'm making these landscape photographs. And then going to some exhibits in New York and seeing the MoMA and seeing photography exhibits. I really was hooked. So then I applied to MICA. And it was great because all I had was studio classes left. So I could just go to MICA and just take, all the cream of the crop. I wasn't burdened by any of the academics. I had all that done. And so I had a very successful education at MICA.
That's wonderful. I did not know that about the background in botany that you had. That's really cool. Mm-hmm. So you are, like I said, one of the professors here at CCBC. What do you enjoy the most about teaching?
It's if you look at our student body, the people that you have as students, you have someone who is young and is just trying to figure things out, to see how they might fit into the world. You have some adults who have had experience in the world and looking for either some other type of personal enrichment or another opportunity for some income development. And when I see all this variety, I see how many different ways I can make a difference in someone's life. And it's really amazing to me that, to think of someone, we have students who come from, a lot of them come from a very strong working class background, and it's hard for them to convince their parents, that they could be an art major. It's just when I see their growth and when I see, them growing and being able to kind of embrace their true selves, and that's what's most important for me, is to realize that. So, and I think that's what's unique about CCBC, and that is the real breadth of the students that we get, the variety of students. And you can still make a difference in each one of their lives. And that's the best thing about teaching.
That's wonderful. If you were in front of someone and they asked about your artwork and you had no way of showing them any of your work, like any of your pieces, how would you describe your
art? Well, that's always difficult because, art is a visual medium, so it's like, so if I were to describe it, I don't know what's going on in their head when they think about what I'm doing. And I've explained what I do many times to people. And so just for an example, that I use a scanner. I use a scanner to capture artwork, or not artwork, but to make my images. So I actually take flowers and I put them down on to a flatbed scanner. And then I scan them. And, what I do is I scan them over time, when they go through various stages of decay. And so I'll go into a 20-minute, expo about how I do this. And then the students looking at, not student, but whoever I'm talking to looks at me and with a query, and they go, but when you put the lid down, don't you squash the plants? And I realized then that, I don't have a lid, it's like, so I tell them it's suspended from the ceiling, so there is no lid. So here I realized that they were stuck on the very, very beginning of conversation. So, but the subject of the picture, not just the technique, but the subject of the picture has to do with transition. And that is that, photography it's based on observations. And what I choose to observe is the transition of botanicals as they age. That we all have a perception of beauty. And, a lot of times you think that the flower, when it opens and blossoms, that you might think that is the most beautiful time of that flower. But I somewhat disagree. And I think that if you don't throw away that bouquet of tulips that's on your dining room table, if you don't throw that away when the petals begin to fall off and shed, but if you continue to watch that process, that you'll find that tulip has morphed into some other sculptural element that's really remarkable. So, if I were to say, if I were to tell you that, and then the response, well, you mean you photograph dead plants? And it's kind of like, what you conjure up in your mind is a lot different that I'm working with. Specifically, what I'm working with is a scientific term known as deliquescence. Deliquescence is when something, in my case, the bearded iris, when it is picked and it starts to decay, what happens is it absorbs moisture from the humidity in the air. And as it absorbs that bearded iris begins to melt. So it gains all this moisture from the air, and then it just floods out onto my picture plane. And it goes into this decay of melting. The term deliquescence is actually even being applied to global warming and to glaciers. And that is how they're going into transition and they're changing. So the idea that I'm working with deliquescence is specifically my charge, that what I've been focusing on over the last couple of years.
That is so cool. That is wonderful. And you said earlier that you had a couple images on Bridge that you'd like to show.
I do.
Go through those. That would be great.
Okay. So here's an example of the bearded iris. This is what I'm talking about. This is the plant that is crazy enough to absorb all this moisture. Not all plants do this. Not all of them do it. Deliquescence, it's the process by which a substance absorbs moisture from the atmosphere until it dissolves in the absorbed water and forms a solution. So it occurs when the vapor pressure of the solution that is formed is less than the partial pressure of the water vapor within it. So this is what I do. I have this large piece of patinaed copper. I grow the irises. I break them apart on this big piece of copper. And when I do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to wait for these to begin to dissolve. And as they dissolve, I'm going to go in and locate areas of interest in terms of their design. So here, I just freshly broken up irises laid out onto this copper plate. I replenish it because, each day I get new irises grown in the garden. So each day I add new irises while others are going through the transition. So you can see that they're beginning to break down. And you can see here that some of them that were put down first, they're starting to shrivel. And I'll come back in and I will add more flowers to that. And I keep looking into it, and you can see they're absorbing the moisture, and they're going into these processes of melting. All the while I'm adding new to it, and adding more as I'm doing it. And then I go in and I start to study these various stages. So you can see how this twisted, or you can see how these kind of, their color evacuates. It's very much like in the fall when the leaves change colors. These will also change colors. So the blue irises might end up being kind of an ochre, or some kind of a ochre color, not ochre. So I also put these little petals on other substances, like this is watercolor paper. So as it begins to dissolve, it's going to leave a trail of its ink, or the moisture that it goes through. I also put them on glass. And once I put them on glass, I actually can lay it on my scanner, so I can scan this glass plate, and then you see I can lift that off, I can put another one on. So I will have, in the spring, I'll have 15 of these glass plates with all kinds of flowers on them, going through the degrading through the deliquescence. I now take this glass plate and I take it outside and I start to walk around with it. And you can see that I now get reflections of the landscape in the glass. And I now am taking pictures of it with my cell phone. So the last 2 years, I've vacated the scanning system, and I'm now making images with the cell phone, working with the tops of these plates. So, but you can see that here, this glass plate is laying on the grass. So you can see some of the grass through it, but you can see the reflection of the sky. So it has this very ambiguous space.
Yeah,
Now,
I honestly could not decide. Like, I thought maybe it was propped just straight up and down because of the sky reflect. That's trippy. That's really cool.
Yeah. So, well, see, to explain this without pictures is like, dream on. You can't get there without the picture. This is my studio. So in preparation for a show or for a presentation, I make a lot of tests. So my printer there is 44 inches wide, so I can print pretty big. But I'll go through and I will take these various stages of deliquescence. I'm not trying to show a time lapse. I'm not trying to show one picture and then it decays a little bit, then it decays a little. No, I don't, because each day the humidity acts on the plants a little bit differently. It'll take about 10 days for the plant to go through its complete cycle of complete dissolve. So I make a variety of tests. You can see here that working, there's variations of color saturation and contrast control that I'm working with. So I make a lot of different print tests, and I print on different papers. And then, I ultimately then, will resolve with, a larger, final picture. So. That's what the work looks like.
Well, thank you so much for sitting down with us today, Bob. And this has been delightful. And I hope everyone also enjoyed this, and will watch some of the other interviews. And if you're around, can visit the exhibition, and just like and subscribe to our channel for more wonderful insight into artists and their lives. So thanks again.
Thank you.